Welcome, dear readers. You're listening to Time to Read, a Winnipeg Public Library podcast book club. We're recording today from the Millennium Library in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which is within Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ininew, and Dakota peoples, and in the National Homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. In this episode, we will be discussing The Postcard by Anne Berest. I'm Dennis from the Idea Mill, and I got a postcard in the mail once, but it wasn't very mysterious. Across the table from me is...
I'm Toby. I'm an outreach librarian based out of here at Millennium Library, and I don't have a joke about the Holocaust, Dennis and Trevor. And across the table from me is...
Hi, I'm Trevor from the Louis Rail Library, and the last postcard I received was from my dentist, reminding me that I'm due for a cleaning.
A good book can carry me away from an average and ordinary day, yeah. So keep it down, leave me alone, close the doors and turn off the phone, 'cause all I ever really need is a little more time to read.
And you, dear readers, we wouldn't do this without you. If you've got comments about what we've read or maybe some book suggestions, we'd love to hear it. You can find our email address and all our social media outlets by going to our website at wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca and scrolling to the bottom of the page. Hang around till the end of the episode to enjoy our most beloved segment, Nerd Words for Word Nerds. So we've talked it over already and we don't have any check-ins today, so we're just going to jump into Toby telling us about the author, after which Trevor will give us a summary of the book.
All right. Anne Berest was born September 15th, 1979. She was the middle of three daughters and grew up in a Parisian suburb. She studied French literature in high school and considered going into academia, though instead worked for a theater for several years and then co-founded a small publishing house that wrote biographies of seniors for their families. She interviewed many people for this position, often members of the Jewish community, and credits this experience for teaching her how to write characters. By her early 30s, she had published several novels, including 2010's La Fille de son Père and 2012's Le Patriarche, which both explore family mysteries. There was also the tongue-in-cheek international bestseller How to Be Parisian Wherever You Are, which she co-wrote with three friends. She was also commissioned to write a biography about the late novelist François Séguin, which is where she started weaving the past and present together in her work. With her sister, who is also a successful novelist, she wrote a biography of her great-grandmother, Gabrielle Buffet, who was an art critic in the early 20th century, and also Marcel Duchamp's lover and muse. Le Carte Postale was published in 2021 in French and translated into English in 2023 by Tina Cover. It was a long-selling bestseller in France and a library journal, NPR, and Time Best Book of the Year. It made the final selection for the Prix Goncourt as well as the Prix Renaudot. Berest has also written for the screen, including a biopic about a Jewish-French film producer and a French television series about suburban motherhood. And she lives in Paris.
She sure does.
Most of what's written about her is in French, which I can't read, so
So you just made it up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or used a translation service.
Yeah, I guess I could have done that.
Or you could have called up Miss Tina Cover, the translator.
Does she know about
I think she probably knows a little bit about her.
But like her biography, her background information,
Yeah,
when she was born, how many
they
siblings
probably,
she has?
they probably had meetings and they're like, hey, where are you from? I'm from Paris.
Perhaps. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know anything about Tina Cover, the translator, or Anne Berest. I don't even know how to pronounce her last name, to be honest.
The audiobook reader called it Berest.
Berest.
Yeah.
I can tell that Toby and Dennis are waiting for the summary of this novel.
Which is the typical thing we do after the bio. Yeah.
Considering the way this episode has begun, maybe we should be doing this with our listeners, just to contradict what Dennis says. We can't do this without you. But maybe for this episode we should. Anyway, the summary of this novel is The Postcard. Now, is it even a novel? We can talk about that. It's what I would call a hybrid of a memoir. It's sort of a historical investigation, a family story, family history, and I guess a novel because it's shelved in the fiction, in which Anne Berest sets out to uncover the mystery behind an anonymous postcard her mother received in the year 2003. The card bears only 4 names, those of Berest's maternal great-grandparents, aunts, and uncle, all of whom were murdered at Auschwitz during the Holocaust. For years, the postcard remains an enigma until Barres decides to investigate who sent it and why. As the search unfolds, the book becomes a deeply personal exploration of Jewish identity, intergenerational trauma, and memory. Barres retraces her family's history from pre-war Europe through the devastation of the Shoah and into post-war France, piecing together silent stories and lost lives, blending archival research, interviews, and introspection. The postcard examines how the past continues to shape the present and how confronting inherited pain can become an act of resistance, remembrance, and self-definition.
So how'd you guys find it?
Well, I think to start off, we should say that this book was a recommendation from one of our listeners who let us know that she had read it, Beth. So thank you, Beth, for this recommendation. And we love to get recommendations and other interactions from our listeners. So please don't be shy. Even if you don't have a recommendation, if you just want to let us know your thoughts, we would love to hear them. So we did what she asked, which was we all read the book and we are about to discuss it. Yeah, boy, I mean, I don't know if I've ever read a book that is so close to a memoir, but isn't a memoir. A few months ago, we read a book by Louise Erdrich called The Night Watchman, which was, in all intents and purposes, a memoir of her grandfather's experiences in the 1950s in South Dakota. North Dakota?
North Dakota.
North Dakota. But she changed the characters' names, and so the spirit of that family story appears in that, but maybe not the details. In this novel, Anne Barres goes a step further and actually tells the story of her own family, her grandparents, her aunts, her uncles, as well as real historical figures who weave in and out of their lives from about early 20th century through to most of it takes place during World War II, but interspersed with sections of the story that take place sort of in the present day. And we start to find out, or Anne finds out, we find out through Anne, a lot of her family history, primarily her aunt, her great aunt, Miriam, who was the only survivor.
Her great-grandmother.
Her great-grandmother was the only survivor of...
Her grandmother. Miriam is the Miriam, Leela, Anne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Okay, right. Yeah,
It's her great-grandparents who were murdered.
Would have been Emma.
Auschwitz. Yeah.
Emma would have been
Emma and
her
Ephraim.
great-grandmother.
And so, okay, right. Yeah, and so it's all there, you know? It's all there.
All right. I enjoyed this book. It's weird to say I enjoyed this book because it's a very heavy book. It's a big bummer. It's a hard book to read. World War II and the Holocaust, it's hard to fathom these huge historical events. They seem very far away, both geographically and in time. So I feel like stories like this that kind of make it more personal and that drill down to talk about individual people's experiences of these things really make these huge, unfathomable events much more understandable and real. This book had me doing a lot of personal reflection. You know, I'm Jewish. All 4 of my grandparents were in Europe during World War II. And it's it's just kind of a miracle that Miriam survived. And because Miriam survived, she was able to have Leela, who was able to have Anne, who could write this book. You know, it seems miraculous that I'm here, that all 4 of my grandparents survived and that they had my parents, that I'm here, you know, because this was a nearly successful genocide. You know, this scope is... Like I said, it's unfathomable. And yeah, so hard. It was hard to read.
I found it interesting that the writing in a lot of ways feels kind of light for such a heavy topic. Not to say that she was making light of anything, obviously, but the writing flowed smoothly. There's a lot of detail in this book because Anne's mother made sure that she had dates, times, addresses, serial numbers, all the specifics for everything that she researched for the book, which was the basis of a lot of the novel. It's interesting how light a touch she had with the writing, given how serious all of the subject matter is. There are a lot of characters in this book. And it's interesting, kind of weird even to say characters, because it feels so much like a biography.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's essentially a biography where, because it's fiction, she could imagine many of the scenarios where it wasn't possible to have exact detail of them.
Yeah, like all the dialogue, I'm sure, is invented, right?
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah. So I did find it a little tough to keep track of everybody because there were so many people.
You listened to it?
No, I listened to it a little bit, and then I ended up going back and reading it anyway. And yeah, it was well written. I don't want to say I enjoyed it because, again, you don't enjoy stories of so much suffering because Anne's family went through the worst possible things that they could. It's kind of emotionally devastating, especially, and she did a really good job of kind of illustrating all of the after effects of this kind of horror, where Anne's grandmother wouldn't talk about any of this stuff. Or they had to discover all of the family history without any reference from her because she lived through it but could not talk about it.
My grandparents wouldn't talk about it either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very hard book to summarize easily or to categorize how I felt about it.
And I think, I mean, not only was I, reflecting personally on the Holocaust and how that affected my family, but, you can really draw a lot of parallels to what is happening in today's world with what is happening in this book. You see the systematic, gradual tightening of liberties for French people and how that kind of just leads to one thing after another. So I found that really interesting to reflect on. I mean, I found it fascinating that in the family's quest for a safe place to go, they went to Palestine. Like LOL sob. Yeah, just so interesting.
The other thing that I think Anne Brest did really well with this book was sort of the shifting focus of the characters. Like, depending on what part of the book you're reading, you get really invested in the characters that she's talking about. And again, maybe characters isn't the right word. The people that she's writing about, like, I got so into the family of Ephraim and Emma Rabinovich and their kind of quest or at least the father's quest to fit in as a full French person with French citizenship and try to be accepted by the culture and never quite being accepted, even though he sent his daughters to the best schools. And he was just never going to be accepted. And so when their story comes to the inevitable tragic end, it was so jarring because it happens fairly soon into the book, actually, like maybe not even halfway. And I feel like, I can't remember exactly, I could flip through it, but she even leaves a couple of blank pages after that before the story picks up again, as if to say that this story is over, but then the family story continues. And then we begin to follow the Miriam story during the war. And then at some points I felt like maybe Anne and her mom were the main characters because they're sort of the narrators and the mom is the one with all the information, but Anne is the one that's asking the questions. And the two of them are kind of like amateur sleuths going around trying to put it together. So I enjoyed that part that it sounds weird to say I didn't know where it was going to go when it's a historical novel about World War II and you kind of know where it's going to go, obviously, but because I didn't know where it was going to go with these people specifically, everything was kind of a surprise, even though it shouldn't have been, looking back on it. But it, like, for example, I think, Dennis, you mentioned like there are parts of history that we don't really even know about. And the scenes that really hit me were after the war was so-called over and the Allies liberated Europe. But then there was this logistical problem of what do we do with all these people that were in the concentration camps? Like what happens to them? They just don't go home. What happens? And I never really thought about that. I just thought, okay, now the war is over and now we move on. And so there was quite a few chapters about this old famous hotel in Paris that's been kind of commandeered as almost like a field hospital or like a place for people to come back and convalesce and build up their strength. And it was also the place, and of course we saw this after 9/11 where people were standing in the streets with photographs saying, have you seen, this person? And again, people are at this hotel holding up pictures saying, have you seen this person? And, and those scenes really, really haunted me because it was something that I never really considered. And yet, of course, life doesn't you don't flip a switch and then the war's over and everything goes back to normal. And
also like the continued racism after that, you know, you don't just like flip a switch and everyone likes Jews again, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it even seems to be worse because, you know, afterwards, you know, some of those taunts that she described in the book, like, your parents died in an oven. Like, what an awful thing to say to another person, right? But it's like, it's there, it's fodder for people who want to outrage someone or hurt someone.
In the same train cars that took them to the death camps were the same train cars and buses that brought them home in some cases, too, which...
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
What got me too is, you know, they're bringing these people back from the camps, and because people from like Nazis were trying to escape, pass themselves off as victims from the camps, they interrogated all of these victims as they came back. So like, as if they haven't gone through enough, here's yet another layer that you're going to have to go through. And you understand why, because you want to catch the perpetrators who are passing themselves off as victims. But like, oh, the horror of just compounding it over and over and making them relive everything and justify that they deserve to come back. The overall impression you get from the book is just that this damage, it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't just turn off with a switch. It just continues on, and the repercussions of it echo into Anne herself trying to figure out this stuff. So it just keeps going. It doesn't go away.
And even with Anne's own daughter experiencing that anti-Semitism on the playground at school and not really even sure, like, do I even bring it up? Is that a big deal? And her mom is saying, you have to talk to her. And her friend, doctor friend, or whatever, his boyfriend was, you know, but again, like, it still exists.
I think one of the themes I felt in the book was that some things are really hard to talk about, and no one wants to talk about them because they're hard. Like when they went back to the village and try to get information about their family, to see, hey, you know, did you know our grandparents? Did you know, can you tell us a little bit about them? Tell us what they were like, things like that. And just everyone's like, oh, you know, don't really want to talk a lot about this. There's this kind of collective guilt or worry about being blamed for something that a lot of people had or have or continue to have. It just makes it really hard to talk about. And that was a barrier that they kept coming up against, just trying to figure out what happened to their family. Like, no one wants to talk a lot.
I mean, the system just kind of made a narc out of everyone, you know, like you needed to report on, if your neighbors were Jews, you needed to report on that. And if you didn't, then there was repercussions for you. And so like no one was safe.
Yeah. The tragedies just keep compounding like that. Yeah. The system makes you complicit with it if you want to survive. Like you're saying, if you're not narking on your neighbor, then maybe they pick you up because you didn't. Yeah.
Like that doctor at the camp.
Yeah.
Who was there. She was not Jewish, but what did she do? She helped Jews? I forget the story as to why she was in the camp.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. She had told them to stop messing with someone, and then they're just like, well, you're going now too, you know?
Yeah. I found the Miriam section lost its way a bit. I found it a little boring.
Like towards the end of the book?
It was near the beginning of her section where it was just talking about the different people who were involved in the resistance and what they did. I got kind of confused as to there was a lot going on there and a lot of moving pieces, and then that weird like love triangle between her Vicente and Eve. Like what? Like why? I don't know why that was there. I mean, I think it picked up again once the war ended and people started coming back and she started being able to look for her family. But I just found that like that chunk was my least favorite part of the book. And
I wonder if that part was also the least researched because Miriam never talked about that. Maybe I shouldn't say least researched, but maybe the most dramatized in a way. Like there may not have been a lot of primary documents about what Miriam was doing during that time, but she was able to find a lot of information about what was going on in the resistance, because I found that too. There's a lot of sort of like name dropping of people that we only hear about once or twice until we came across Samuel Beckett. is mentioned.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and I had to look it up. And yeah, he worked for the resistance during the war. And then some of these other people, if not all of the other people she mentions, are actually real historical people, like that evil priest who was a double agent, the guy that would recruit young people into the resistance and then turn them over. And he had he sounded like such a made up villain, but he was a real person because he had like a place of residence where he had not one, but two mistresses.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
This was a priest.
yeah, they talk about him in the book, I think. Yeah, he was a priest. Yeah. But I don't think they go into all the detail about him in the book, but I did a little reading and yeah, he was a real piece of work.
But what about the love triangle? Like, why dedicate so many pages?
Well, I assume because, like, it's essentially a biography or a telling of her family story, and that was a part of her family story.
But it's not related to the war. It's not related to, like, the main thesis of this novel.
Eve becomes her second husband.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's that picture where isn't Miriam sitting on, is it Miriam no, it wouldn't be
Or
Miriam.
Leela?
Leela sitting on her dad's lap and then also sitting on Eve's lap. And she's wearing the same outfit. So she said this is the last time all of them were together that I know for sure. Remember? And then that was only a month before Vicente dies.
I guess I thought maybe there was going to be something about, like, her paternity, and that was going to be something, and then maybe there'd also be something between Yves and Vicente, but there wasn't anything there either, so it just...
I kind of took it as, in war, a lot of strange things happen.
And this
People don't do things that maybe they would have done in a different circumstance. It's an extreme situation, and sometimes you end up with really strange things happening.
And is it Vicente? I don't know how you say it.
None of us know how to pronounce it. Mentally, I was saying Vicente.
Vicente.
But I don't know.
But he's French, so that sounds more Italian.
Yeah,
It does.
I don't know.
But anyway, that guy, his parents were also in a threeple. Is that what the kids call them these days?
Thruple.
A thruple? Because it was like Gabriella and Francis.
Oh, Marcel Duchamp.
And Marcel Duchamp was in
Yeah.
there before he became a world famous artist. He was right in there. Remember they were saying like when they would go for supper, everyone would have to set three plates.
I just found there was a whole chapter dedicated to Vicente getting high on heroin and
yeah.
having
opium.
Opium. Go to that opium den.
And there was a lot of time spent describing his sex, and it's like, okay, I get it. Okay, you're still going. Oh, still going.
And then she's writing about her grandpa.
Yeah. Well, grandparents were young once too.
Young and pervy.
That's right, young and pervy and addicted to opium.
Yeah. I mean, I figured once he went off to the opium den that he was going to be unreliable and that there were going to be problems as a result from that. But yeah, just felt a little long.
But it was a very touching story though. The first time he goes to the opium den because he's going with his
with
father.
his dad,
It was
yeah.
kind of a nice bonding experience.
Yeah.
It's like going to a baseball game.
But doesn't his dad watch him get a hand job or something?
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It kind of went on quite a while, and
It's wartime. Although I guess that technically was before the war. Let's just say that artists, they lived a bohemian lifestyle. When's that?
Different times.
Different times. Yes.
Leave it to us to find the little sexy parts in this book and discuss them at length.
well, like the book did. I mean, Vicente's whole family thing was such a weird dynamic anyway, because his parents clearly didn't really care much about him. And he only married Miriam because she was Jewish and because that would outrage people around him.
Yeah, that was not a real love match.
No, but Miriam was swept away because he was handsome and charming. The relationships, the interpersonal dynamics in this book were really complicated.
Yeah, also, I mean, in the the present day bits, Gerard, he's totally into her, right?
Is Gerard her friend?
Yeah.
The guy that she keeps meeting for lunch on Tuesdays Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even though she's dating that Georges guy?
And he could just be a friend. I mean,
he seems very flirty.
yeah, but the way that he's described, he's like that with everybody. He's so much fun to be around. Even he says so.
Speaking of Anne's relationships, do we ever find out who the father of Clara is? I don't think that it's ever mentioned like
I mean, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I was just wondering, though. She writes about her grandpa going to the opium den. I mean, yeah, we don't need to know, but I'm just wondering, like,
I don't think
they're
so.
not in the story. Maybe
Not that I recall.
he wrote a cease and desist letter. It was like, you're going to write this book. Keep me out of it. I mean, you never know.
So all this is to say a very multi-layered story with a lot of characters and a lot of moving parts.
Literally. What? Come on now. And I will say that, I mean, I don't think this is a spoiler to say that we do find out who writes the postcard.
In the very last chapter.
I was getting very worried towards the end that this is going to be one of these things where it's just left unsaid. But and I'm okay with not saying who wrote it for those that are reading. But I was really hoping we would get closure, and we did.
Yeah. Although I had pegged that about 2/3 of the way through.
Really?
Yeah. Well, when they were trying to describe it, and they said, well, this kind of had to be from somebody who knows the family, so like neighbors, friends, family, something like that. And it only had the 4 names on the card. And then I was thinking about it a while, and I thought, I think I know who it is. Like, I didn't know why at the moment I thought it, but I thought, yeah, I think I know who it is. And then it turned out I was right. So
It's all those detective novels.
yeah, maybe.
I did like that private detective that she hires.
Yeah. No, I was
Falk
thinking
or
of the handwriting analysis, Jesus.
Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good, but he was recommended to her from the
By
detective.
the detective, yeah.
I just thought he was just a very interesting, like, do you think, I mean, I think he just leapt off the page in terms of his personality.
I feel like all private detectives in any situation, like in books and movies, there's always something about them,
Yeah. Well, they've all seen a lot because they're always investigating people's seamy hidden lives.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. One thing I will say, there were a lot of what you call coincidences in the book, which, if it were a fictional novel, you might think, well, some of these are a little convenient. But also, this is essentially a biography. So it's just like, well, okay, things happen, right? You get a lot of weird coincidences, like certain dates where an important thing happened in one generation, and then in the next generation, same date happened again to someone else. There were a few of those.
Or like, doesn't Anne find out that she went to the same school as her great aunts?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that her aunt, her great aunt, would have been a novel or wanted to be a novelist, and then she's a novelist, and her sister's a novelist, and that their middle names were actually their great aunt's names, but they didn't know it up until she did the research on it. All these little connections between the people and between the times, and you might accuse an author of being a little heavy-handed if that was all fictional and just designed to slide together like that, but real life contains some of those just arbitrarily. It happens, right? Or it has deep significance and meaning, and there's a greater power guiding it, as how other people will view it. There must have been at least a half dozen or maybe like 10 incidents like that in the book.
Yeah, it must be an interesting experience, like living in the same place that, your grandparents did, because these things can happen. Like, that's just such a foreign concept for me.
Yeah. I know what you mean. My family history is like, Europe and then Russia and then South America and like all over the place. I'm not constantly seeing reminders of the past that would bring to mind these stories about the family history in the way that Anne is seeing them all the time. And it's like, oh, hey, we're close to that village. This is where Grandma lived. We should go,
Yeah.
Or when she takes the train to her mom's and she say, well, this would have been the zone around Paris where Marianne would have ridden her bicycle, on escaping that night. And yeah, so many layers on layers.
Did you know this is Naomi on the cover?
I did not.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering at one point who that was, but...
And is the stamp upside down?
The stamp is upside down.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
I listened to an interview with the author and the translator, and Anne Brest wanted to put the postcard as the cover image, but the publisher thought this would be better, and I think I agree. It's quite striking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People's faces always are more appealing than something more abstract.
Yeah,
buildings.
and it's like, she died in a concentration camp, and that was the whole point, to kind of erase people, and putting her on this book, it reverses that somewhat.
I also found it really interesting how to do all this research, they had to look at a lot of memoirs that people had written of their own experiences during the war. I've read history books before about places that I've been, and et cetera, but I don't keep finding my family members listed there, you know? For her, when she was doing this research, she just kept coming up with, oh, I'm reading this book by so-and-so about this thing, and there's Miriam, and there's, like, she just keeps running into her family in history books and piecing together their lives from all of those different other lives that they touched.
Yeah, which is another, like, interesting thing to be able to speak and read the same languages that your grandparents did. Because again, that's not the case with me, and I don't think it's not the case with many Canadians.
Yeah, definitely not with me.
Yeah.
I can read a little bit of German and not much Spanish.
It would make genealogical research a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Do we have more to say?
No, I think we said more than we thought we might have had to say once we started talking about it, but that's often the case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe let's talk about if we would recommend this book and who you might recommend it to.
Mm.
So I think this is one of those books where it's I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everyone.
I recommended this book to my mom recently because she has an interest in the Holocaust and World War II, considering her mother and, well, both her parents were involved. I don't know, though, if she actually would read it, or, like I said, you can't really enjoy this book, but yeah, it's tricky. I think anyone who enjoys historical fiction or people who want a deeper understanding of what happened in this period of time, or someone who, I understand that not a lot of people know about the Holocaust these days. And
which is shocking, right?
It blows my mind. So this would be a good read for that.
I'd also recommend it for people that sort of just enjoy well-written sort of family dramas, whether it's involved with a war or not. Because I found that of course, the backdrop of World War II makes it very evocative and relatable. But I found just the different stories of these families and moving and trying to find home and identity and never quite settling very interesting and very moving. So I would recommend it, even if it wasn't somebody who I knew enjoyed historical fiction about World War II. I would recommend it from the storytelling side of it.
Yeah, she writes very well, and it's compelling and readable. I think it's a worthwhile book. Like, I think it could be worthwhile for anybody who just wants a better understanding of the world around them. I mean, here in Winnipeg, just recently, there were a bunch of swastikas painted on the sides of buildings. We have not escaped from our past. We have not escaped from our biases and our hatreds and stuff like that. So getting more of an understanding of this from this particular perspective is valuable, but it's also difficult and challenging. So I find it difficult to just say everybody should read it, even though in a way everybody should.
Also, I think sometimes it's when somebody reads it that's important, that you might have to want to explore. And sometimes people just can't read more. Sometimes people just need a break from these kinds of books too. And so it's hard to recommend because you don't know what the other person is thinking. You know, like I would not read another book like this right after this book. I purposely read a goofy little thriller right now just because, almost like as a palate cleanser. And so I think, depending on your mindset too, you'll get something out of this book, more or less depending on maybe where you're at.
Yeah. So very well written book, very important subject. It's interesting on many levels, so I think we all like it in that sense.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Emotionally challenging because it's hard to read about people suffering and people causing that suffering so callously, so much evil in a book. It's hard emotionally, but it's a good book.
Yeah, I think it's important to bear witness to what happens because we don't want to forget.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even as I say, it's difficult and hard to recommend on that front. It's also you cannot ignore the past because you don't want to repeat it. That's what they always said about history. Those who don't read history are doomed to repeat it. And it's yeah. And, in the present day, we find ourselves echoing a lot of the things that happened then. And we really need to not forget and to stand up when it's time to stand up.
Another thing I think this book taught me was that even if you think you have a good handle on the events of World War II, it never hurts to read another point of view about it. And this one, written from a specific family, it felt fresh to me. I learned things that I didn't know before, and never sort of close your mind off to, well, I don't need to read another book like that, because there's always going to be something that touches you.
Yeah. With all that said, we're going to move on to our next segment, which is, Can You Tell Me a Book I Would Also Like? So who has a recommendation to start with?
You guys are both looking at me, so I will go first. And this book that I'm going to recommend is by a person who was actually mentioned in the postcard. The book is called Sweet Francais by Irene Nemirovsky. And there was one scene, it was at the first camp that Jacques and Naomi were at. And when Naomi was working with the doctor, she said, "Oh, you're a writer. Oh, we just had a writer through here." And I think it was even the same day that Irene Nemirovsky was at that camp for a couple of days, but then she left just hours before Jacques and Naomi arrived. And so this was a book, historical novel. It was actually written in 1941-42 during the war, during the Nazi occupation of France. But it wasn't published until 2004 because the manuscript was kept by Irene Nemirovsky's daughters and was never actually opened and looked at until 1998. And so the book was actually originally planned to be 5 parts, sort of 5 almost short stories or novellas, but she was only able to complete 2 of them before she died in Auschwitz. And so the book itself is just the first 2 parts. One is called Storm in June. It follows various Parisian families fleeing the German invasion in June 1940. And the second part is called Dolce, or Sweetness. It's set in a small French village under German occupation. And this section focuses on the daily lives, moral dilemmas, and emotional adjustments of villagers, including the complex relationship between a woman and a German officer who is stationed there. So I think one of those parts, I think it was the Sweetness part, was made into a movie a while back. And so, yeah, that's the book I recommend.
So I'm recommending a movie this month, but it is based on a book. The movie is Zone of Interest. Have either of you seen it or heard of it?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So it's not that old. It's from 2023. It's based on the novel of the same name by Martin Amis. It seems like despite its many accolades, like it won Best Foreign Film at the Oscars. It was nominated for Best Picture also at the Oscars. It just seems like a lot of people haven't seen or even heard of it. The film focuses on the life of a German commandant and his wife who live with their family next to Auschwitz, where the commandant works. And they literally live like right next door to Auschwitz. And the family lives a pretty ordinary life, which of course is juxtaposed with the unseen horrors happening next door. You know, the family has guests and the kids play in the backyard and just usual everyday stuff with Auschwitz in the background. And, you know, as they go about their day-to-day life, we hear screams in the background. We hear gunshots. We hear incinerator noises. The gardener comes by to fertilize their plants with ashes. Like this book, it's hard. It's hard to watch. Like this one was hard to read, but it's really powerful and I will never watch it again, but it's important. You know, as I said, it's important to bear witness and remember what happened. And this just does it in like a pretty unique and interesting way.
I'm going to recommend a book that was mentioned in the book, which is Mouse, A Survivor's Tale by Art Spiegelman. Have you both read that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a graphic novel and has been declared the greatest or most important graphic novel ever written. It bears some resemblance to the postcard in that a lot of it is based on conversations between Art Spiegelman and his father, or was it his grandfather? It's been a while since I read it. I read it in the 90s and I didn't refresh myself too much on it before thinking of it. A lot of it is him talking with his, I'm going to say father, and then recollections of his father, who was a concentration camp survivor, and him telling his son these stories and his son illustrating it. And he illustrates the Jews as mice and the Nazis as cats. And then later on, when the Americans come in, they're dogs. So it's like, it's cutesy cartoony, sort of, but also it's, the story of his father surviving in this camp and what he had to do, and also what their relationship is like afterwards and the difficulties they had communicating with each other. And, like Art had a lot of trouble understanding why why he was constantly hoarding things, every little thing, no matter what it was. He was collecting it because of his experiences and his trauma. It's 2 parts, although you can find them compiled together. It's good. It's really solid. If you found this story interesting, compelling, you will find Mouse compelling as well. I also came across another book which struck me as The Ghetto Within by Santiago Amagorina, which I haven't read, but it's about Polish exiles in Buenos Aires, one of them incidentally named Vicente, riddled with guilt about leaving their family behind when their family is in Europe and subject to the Holocaust. So it deals a lot with survivor's guilt and the ripples of this tragic event all over the place, like just how you live with it afterwards. Haven't read that one, but it sounds really interesting. And now for the segment that people talk about around the water cooler, Nerd Words for Word Nerds, in which we plant little seeds of linguistic knowledge by talking about words or phrases that we find interesting. Who's got a word?
Go for it.
I have a word. It was inspired by the title of this novel, The Postcard. So I wanted to do a little research into where the term mail came from. Now, of course, I don't have to start looking very far to realize that there's 2 kinds of mail. There's armor, and there are letters. So I wanted to go a little bit more specific with chain mail. And there are 2 kinds of chain mail. There's armor, and there's letters. So the armor comes from, we think, the old French word malier, which is to hammer, but also the modern French word mallet, which is a loop or a stitch. But I want to focus more on the letter mail, which comes from the Middle English word mail, spelled M-A-L-E, which refers to a traveling bag or a pack. So the term mail doesn't originate necessarily from the thing that's in the bag. It originates from the bag, the mail bag. And then eventually we stopped calling it the mail bag and just the mail. But you guys would probably remember chain mail or chain letters. Mm-hmm. I think I first discovered them like in junior high, where I would get a letter passed to me, a note saying that copy this and send this to 5 people, or else either something terrible will happen to you, and or cross the name off in the top and send it on. I don't know. I guess I did it. I don't remember. I think I probably didn't, and bad things were supposed to happen to me. Maybe some bad things have happened to me. I don't know. But anyway, it's interesting. Apparently, it's huge in Japan, or was about 100 years ago in 1922 or so. Let me just get my my notes here. Yes, here we go. So around 1922 in Tokyo, there was something called the Kun no Tagami, which was the lucky letter. And often these things would start by saying, "This is a lucky letter." And you were encouraged to copy it, and then good luck would come to you. These ones were a lot more open, sort of transparent. You could see who sent it to you. You could see other people on the list. They became a real phenomenon in Japan. But later on, I don't know if it's because, the 60s and things were changing, there was the Fuko no Tagami, which was also called the unlucky letter. And it would often start with, "This is an unlucky letter." And I'll just read one of them. It says, "This is an unlucky letter. The person who receives this must send the same letter to 10 people within 1 week. Mr. and Mrs. Blank in class 6-2 at Blank Elementary School stopped the letter and died in a traffic accident 10 days later. If you ignore this, disaster will surely befall you too." And these types of letters really caused like a huge cultural panic. So much so that the government had to come out and talk about how, don't worry about it. But they do pervade in Japanese culture. And in fact, there was a famous horror movie series called The Ring. And it was sort of based on the idea where if you watched a videotape, I think you were supposed to copy it and send it to people. Or if you watch it, you die with it. I don't know. I never saw it. But again, chain letters.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
My word is not related to this book in any way. It's defenestration, which is a silly word, but I thought we would need maybe a bit of a palate cleanser after such a serious book. But defenestration is throwing a person or thing out of a window, or it can mean...
How on earth could that be a lighthearted...
Well, it's silly. Like, when would you ever need to use such a word?
When you're talking about things that happen to the political opponents of Vladimir Putin, they fall out of windows a remarkable percentage of the time.
See, I think of it in more like a cartoony, sort of funny way.
All right.
Yeah, then don't read about Russian political
Well, just
situations.
picture like Bugs Bunny being thrown out of a window as I read this.
Okay.
All right, I'll allow it.
I mean, it can also mean usually swift dismissal or expulsion as from a political party or office. Fenetra is French for window, which I learned because I'm on 1,000 and some odd days of my Duolingo streak. But it also comes from the Latin fenestra. So add the prefix de, which can mean from, down, or away, and you get defenestration, from window. And yeah, it just strikes me as a funny word. You know, English doesn't have many of these like very specific types of words. So I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good word.
It is a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a word that it's not obvious what it means just from hearing it.
Yes.
So it does deserve a moment in the nerd words.
Thank you.
Yes. I went the opposite of a palate cleanser.
Wow, I should have gone last.
Yeah, I should have. I should have maybe considered that, because my word is Holocaust. I'm assuming we all know, and that everyone listening knows, that the Holocaust, with a capital T and a capital H, refers to the intentional and systematic genocide of Jews in Europe perpetrated by the Nazis during World War II. But the word Holocaust itself is much older. It's derived from the Greek holocauston, holos meaning completely and kauston meaning burnt, and it referred to a completely burnt sacrificial offering. And according to Britannica, this is a translation of the Hebrew word olah, meaning a burnt sacrifice offered whole to God. The first recorded use of the word that we have is English chronicler Richard of Devizes, in his account of the coronation of Richard I in 1189, used the word Holocaust when he described the mass murder of the Jews in London. And there he did mean it as sacrificial offering. Holocaust has been used many times to describe other massacres, like the Ottoman massacre of Armenian Christians in the 1890s, the burning and sacking of Smyrna in 1922 during the Greek genocide, the Armenian genocide of World War I. But after World War II, the Holocaust, always capitalized, became clearly and completely associated with the Nazi final solution. It's not the only term for what happened. In France and Israel, the biblical Hebrew word Shoah, which means catastrophe, became the preferred word. And Yiddish-speaking Jews and survivors of Nazi persecution called the murder of the Jews the Herban, or destruction, in the aftermath of the events. There are people who don't like the use of the word Holocaust to describe what happened because of the religious connotations of the origins of the word, because, you know, they say that this was not a sacrifice to God, and it's offensive to think of it that way. It's a deep topic, and I'm not going to go any further on it because, you know, it's depressing, and I really shouldn't have gone last. But it just occurred to me that I've heard the word most of my life, and I never actually thought about where it came from or what it meant. So, yeah, Holocaust.
Maybe you could tell us your Jerry Lee Lewis thing now.
It wasn't even Jerry Lee
Because
Lewis.
it's-
It was, oh my God.
Sorry, whatever it was. So that
right.
could be our palate cleanser.
We kind of have an unwritten rule on the podcast that we don't talk about the book before we actually record, because then it kind of might take some of the oomph of the conversation we have on the mics. But I bumped into Toby last week, and she was telling me that she got a new cat, and the cat's name was Gerald. So I said, you could call him Jer Bear. And she goes, yeah, or Jerry. And then I said, I'm going to make a Jerry Lewis reference on the podcast next week, because when this book, The Postcard, came out, it was huge in France. It's like Jerry Lewis was huge in France.
Wait, is Jerry Lewis and Jerry Lee Lewis, those are different people?
They're very different people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Jerry
Okay.
Lee Lewis was a musician,
Okay.
and famously married someone that was probably like 12 years old or something.
Yeah, Jerry Lewis was a comedian and actor.
Right. And he would.
Well, I learned something
His
today.
his famous line was like, "Lady," he would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is wow, what a tone shift. What is happening?
Well, I think that's about all we can say today. Thank you so much for joining us, dear readers. For our next episode, we're going to read and discuss The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Are you a fan of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit? Want more background on the history and mythology that underlies those stories? The Silmarillion is a collection of myths and stories that tell of Ea, a fictional universe that includes the blessed realm of Valinor, the ill-fated region of Beleriand, the island of Numenor, and the continent of Middle-earth, where Tolkien's most popular works are set. Have comments or book suggestions for us? Send us an email. You can find all our contact info at the bottom of the page at wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca. You can also find all our past episodes there too. If you haven't already, subscribe to Time to Read on your favorite podcasting service. Maybe leave us a review. Tell your book-loving friends about us too. And until next time, make sure you find time to read.
All I need is time to read. All I need is time to read. All I need is time to read. All I ever really need is a little more time to read.
It focuses on the life of a German commandant and his wife who live with their family next to Auschwitz. I'm going to try that again.
For our next episode, we're going to read and discuss this. I said discussed.
Oh, I thought you were going to do your Jerry Lewis thing.
Oh, yeah, no, that was
That was something else.
yeah, that was going to come up in the body of the discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my god.
Sorry.
This is why we don't discuss the
Yeah.
podcast before the podcast.
Yeah, we messed up. Well, stay tuned. Stay tuned.